They say you never really leave the womb alone. If that's true, maybe that's why I've always felt like I had a shadow, someone watching me from just beyond the edges of my sight. My birthday has always been strange. Growing up, the lights always seemed to flicker when I blew out the candles. Balloons would burst for no reason. My mom would laugh nervously, blaming it on bad wiring or cheap party supplies. I didn't think much of it until last year. It was my 25th birthday. The party was low-key, just a few close friends and family. The cake sat untouched, a gaudy chocolate monstrosity with neon candles. I was mid-sentence when everything seemed to shift. There was an odd energy in the air, as if the room itself was holding its breath. I noticed my mom standing in the kitchen, her back to us, her shoulders stiff. Something about her posture made me uneasy. Later that night, my cousin's dad, a man known in the family for his unusual sensitivity to the supernatural, pulled me aside. He told me I had someone with me, someone who never got to live. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I brushed it off as nonsense, but his words stayed with me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The idea burrowed deep into my mind, and I decided to ask my mom about it. She hesitated, her eyes clouding with something I couldn't quite read. Finally, she told me. I had been a twin, but my sibling hadn't made it. My twin's life had been snuffed out before it even began, absorbed into me, a grim biological fact that now felt like a curse. Her words explained so much, the flickering lights, the uneasy feeling that someone was always just out of reach. The knowledge unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. That night, as I lay in bed, the house felt alive. The usual creaks and groans of the old building seemed amplified, each sound a whisper of something unseen. Around midnight, the power went out. The darkness was suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, trying to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it, a silhouette in the hallway. The figure was small, childlike. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't think. It didn't feel malevolent, but it didn't feel benevolent either. It was just there, watching, waiting. The candle flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw eyes, dark, bottomless pits, staring back at me. Then the candle went out, plunging the room into darkness. I felt a cold hand brush against mine, and I screamed, stumbling backward and crashing into the coffee table. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Every shadow seemed to stretch too far. Every sound lingered a second too long. I decided to confront whatever this was. I dug through old photo albums, searching for, I don't know what, proof? Closure? I found a single ultrasound image, buried at the bottom of a box of keepsakes. 2 tiny shapes, side by side. It was undeniable. I knew I needed to do something. Ignoring it hadn't worked. I remembered stories I'd heard about rituals to acknowledge the dead, to give them peace. I gathered what I could, candles, a photo of myself as a baby, and an old stuffed animal that had been mine since childhood. That night, I sat in the living room and spoke to the air, hoping my words would reach whoever or whatever was out there. I apologized for not knowing, for not acknowledging her sooner. I told her she wasn't forgotten, that she was part of me and always would be. As I spoke, the room grew heavy, the air thick and stifling. The candles flickered wildly, and the temperature dropped. Then, I felt it again, a tiny hand brushing against my calf. But this time it wasn't cold. It was warm, almost comforting. The heaviness lifted, and the candles steadied. That night, I dreamed of her. She had my eyes and a shy smile. She held my hand and whispered something I couldn't quite hear. When I woke up, I felt lighter, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. Now, every year on my birthday, I leave a slice of cake on the table for her. The lights don't flicker anymore, and the balloons stay intact. But sometimes late at night, I swear I hear the soft sound of laughter. It doesn't scare me anymore. It feels like a reminder that she's still here, watching over me, just as I'd watch over her if the roles were reversed.
It's been 2 years since my ex Daniel ended his life. His absence is a ghost in itself, one that followed me through the darkest nights, but I'd started to heal. I've even begun to feel happiness again with someone new, Eric. 5 months in, and for the first time, life felt normal. That was until last night. I woke up at 2:14 a.m. to an eerie stillness. Eric was fast asleep beside me. I slipped out of bed, the faint glow of the moon streaming through the window. I wasn't sure why I was awake, but something felt off, like the kind of quiet before an explosion. Walking to the bathroom, I noticed the door to the hallway slightly ajar. That's when I saw him, Daniel. He was standing in the hallway, half shrouded in darkness. His face wasn't quite right, though. His features were shadowy, blurred, but still unmistakably him. He stared at me, his head slightly tilted as if studying me. There was no anger or malice in his expression, just a sadness so heavy I felt it in my chest. I froze, unable to move or speak. It was like the air had thickened around me, pressing against my skin. Then, slowly, Daniel raised his hand and pointed behind me. I didn't want to turn around, but my body betrayed me. I turned my head, and there it was, a shape hunched in the corner of the living room. It was tall and grotesque, its body elongated unnaturally, like a shadow stretched too far. It didn't have a face, but its head cocked toward me in a way that screamed recognition. My breath hitched. When I turned back to the hallway, Daniel was gone. The air around me turned icy, and I stumbled back into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. Eric stirred but didn't wake. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the door, half expecting it to creak open. This morning, Eric asked if I was okay. I told him I didn't sleep well, a gross understatement. The thing is, I can't shake the feeling that Daniel wasn't just appearing to say goodbye or check in. He was warning me, but of what? Or who? Now, as the day drags on, the shadows in our home seem darker, thicker. I keep catching glimpses of movement in the corners of my eyes, but when I turn, there's nothing there. I want to tell Eric, but how do you explain something like this without sounding insane? I'm scared to sleep tonight. If Daniel's ghost was trying to warn me, what happens if I ignore it? And what was that thing in the living room? I'm not sure I'm ready to find out.
I don't know how to start this, but I need to get it out. Writing it down might help me make sense of it, or at least prove to myself that I'm not losing my mind. I'm 29, living alone in a small, creaky house I inherited from my grandmother. She passed 2 years ago, and selling it felt wrong. It's not exactly cozy. Cold drafts slip through the walls. The air always smells faintly of mildew, and at night, the silence feels too deep, like the house is holding its breath. It's just me and my dog, Rufus, rattling around in this place. For a while, things were fine. The usual quirks of an old house, the occasional groan of wood, pipes clanking in the night. But last month, things started changing, and I can't explain any of it. At first, it was little things. Lights I swore I turned off flickering back on, my keys appearing in different rooms. Small, forgettable moments that I brushed off. Stress, exhaustion, my own absent-mindedness. But then Rufus started acting strange. He's a laid-back Labrador, the kind who rarely barks, but lately, he's been fixated on the stairs. He stands there for hours, staring, sometimes growling low in his throat. Other nights, he refuses to enter certain rooms, ears flattened, tail tucked tight between his legs. Then came the footsteps. A week ago, I woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of slow, deliberate steps in the hallway outside my bedroom. My pulse pounded, but I told myself it was just the house settling. Still, I got up, checked every room, every closet. Nothing. But Rufus wouldn't leave my side, his body stiff, growling softly at the empty air. The next morning, the attic door was open. I never go up there. It's a cramped, dusty space filled with my grandmother's forgotten things, and the door has one of those heavy latches that sticks. I know for a fact it was shut. But there it was, open just enough to reveal the yawning blackness beyond. I locked it, tried to forget, but last night, something wanted me to look away. I was watching TV when Rufus started barking, a frantic, panicked sound I'd never heard before. His gaze locked onto the basement door this time. I muted the TV. Listened. At first, silence. Then, tap, 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 coming from the basement. My stomach turned to ice. Someone had broken in. That was my first thought. Had to be. I grabbed a flashlight, pushed the door open. Rufus refused to follow. I descended the stairs slowly, the wooden steps creaking beneath me. The basement was empty, just the damp air and a single bare bulb casting weak light against the concrete walls. I checked the windows, still locked, no signs of a break-in. Then I saw it. In the far corner of the basement, deep scratches marred the concrete wall, not random marks, deliberate, jagged carvings, as if something had clawed at the stone. The lines formed a pattern, letters, but not in any language I recognized. A shiver crawled up my spine. My flashlight trembled in my grip. Then, from above me, the attic door. I ran up the basement stairs, my breath coming in short gasps. The attic door was wide open. The heavy latch dangled loose, swinging gently, as if someone had just stepped through. It was never the basement. It was the attic all along. I didn't sleep last night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers, soft, shuffling footsteps, the rhythmic tap, tap, tap against the walls. Rufus stayed pressed against me, his body rigid, trembling. This morning, I called a locksmith to replace every lock in the house, but I know that's not the problem. I don't want to leave. This is my family's home, but something else is here, and it's getting bolder. If anyone's been through this, tell me I'm not crazy, because I don't think I'm alone anymore.